And then there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit questions there throughout the presentation, and know that we'll have time to answer those questions at the end. And last but not least, once this webinar is complete, there will be a survey that goes out to students. So please take the time to fill that out. So before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. The land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Awaswa-speaking Yupi tribe. The Amamutsen tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to the mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during the Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. All right, so I am going to pass it off to Moss Adams to take it away and present on tips and tricks on how to get hired in accounting.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Kevin Hasegawa. I'm a corporate tax partner. I'll be presenting the first few pages, and then Tammy Rosenblum is going to be presenting the rest of the slides that we prepared. We're going to go through these slides fairly quickly, and we're hoping that we'll have some interaction. I'm hoping, I don't know, Taylor, if there is going to be interaction, is it going to be through chatting kinds of questions, or is there going to be the possibility of having any sort of voice interaction? But either way, we'll try to leave some time so that we can have some interaction with the group and answer any specific questions that they might have. Okay, so if we can go on to the next slide. Okay, great. So I don't think we have the complete list of the bullet points, but that's fine. Looks like it's at least on my screen, we're missing a couple of the lines at the bottom there, but these are the topics that we'll be covering over the next dozen or so pages. So we'll talk about Moss Adams a little bit. We'll have a brief explanation of sort of the process, and then we'll go into actual interview kinds of do's, don'ts, tips, and then at the end, I think we'd like to share some of our experience of what we've seen, what kind of things that you can take into consideration to help you prepare for these interviews. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide here. So this is sort of a snapshot of just the firm's history. We've been around, based out of Seattle, Washington, actually, but we have focus on our businesses focused primarily in the West Coast and California. We have a very strong presence here. We serve quite a few industries. The industry that Tammy and I are specifically working out of is Silicon Valley office. So technology industry is generally the main focus where we work out of, and proud to be at broke 800 million in revenue. So we're not a small firm, we're not a big four, but we are sort of right in the middle. Strategically, that's kind of where we like to be, and that's our sweet spot. But anyway, so we can maybe move on to the next slide here. So the locations kind of shows you pretty graphically where we're located, where we have most of our presence. And one of the reasons it's helpful to have this slide here is it gives you an idea when you're talking to the various firms that you're going to be working with, and you might be interested. Some of you might be interested in small firms. Some of you might be interested in working for a big four or a national firm that's in between, sort of like Moss Adams. But what's important to consider is the firm that you're interviewing with. Is it a good fit for you, and are they going to be working in the in the industries? Are they going to be working in the geographic areas that you're interested in working? And so it's good to do your research ahead of time, not just about the type of business that the company you're interviewing with is in, but also to think about, where physically. So, for example, we have an office in Santa Rosa, and not too many of the larger firms have offices in Santa Rosa. So, if that was of importance to you personally, then that would be something to understand and something to research about each of the firms, where you might be doing business. The other thing to consider is that the location that you pick for an office could actually impact the type of work that you do. So, as you can imagine, if you're working in Santa Rosa, then you might be working on more wineries and agriculture, retail types of businesses, grocery businesses, and so on. Whereas if you work in the Silicon Valley, you might be working on technology. Most likely, you'll be working with technology industry companies. So, San Francisco, it might be more retail and financial. So, again, try to make sure that you do your research ahead of time. Know yourself. Perform a self-assessment to understand what it is that you're interested in, where your personal interests and the firm's interests might align. And those are the kinds of things that it will come out during an interview. And if you've done your homework, it will impress the interviewer, and you'll certainly leave a better impression. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, application preparation. So this is more of a logistical sort of thing, making sure that I don't know if everybody can read that. The font size looks a little bit small for me, but hopefully everybody can read that. So this is covering things like make sure that you're attaching all of the requested documentation, your resume. Make sure that you're answering all the relevant questions that are asked in the application forms. Make sure you're adhering to the deadlines, because unfortunately, a lot of times people might miss the deadlines and be a great candidate, but we might not be able to schedule that interview because of missing the deadlines. So anyway, there are various items here to consider, making sure that the specific, specific requirements are met. I guess I think it depends on the school, but some of the applications need certain kinds of information, and it could actually differ from school to school, I believe. Is that right, Colette? So I think we're providing more of a generic kind of list of items here on this particular page. Making sure that you're aware of CPA eligibility. So if you're interviewing for an accounting firm, be sure to understand what CPA eligibility means and whether you're going to be able to meet those requirements and the timing for being able to meet them. So again, knowing what your specific career plans are and that you've thought through your educational requirements. If you go work for, or if you go to interview with an accounting firm, the expectation is that you will eventually pass the CPA exam, become a credentialed CPA. That's the hope that everybody has when they hire a candidate. And so it's important to know that you'd be eligible to sit for that CPA exam, because accounting firms are typically not going to hire somebody that they don't think is eligible. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, interview process. Is this still my page here, Tammy, or
Yeah, this is your last one.
Okay, great. So, so the steps towards the interview process, making sure that you select, for example, Moss Adams or the firm that you're interested in interviewing with when you go into Handshake, and make sure that you're, or I guess that the process would be that the resumes are reviewed for second round interviews. So, after the first set of interviews, just know that there is typically going to be a second round of interviews. That's usually how accounting firms conduct these. Students are notified if they're going to be moving forward. And then the other thing to be aware of is that interviews tend to be back-to-back. So just make sure that you're prepared for that. You'll be meeting with typically a combination of partners and managers. They could be audit managers, they could be tax, they could be from the tax side or the audit side, sometimes from the consulting side as well. And then typically the offers are going to be decided by that firm's leadership team, the recruiting team, and then the offers are extended with an expiration date. So remember to keep apprised of the deadlines for those offers. You certainly don't want to miss the deadline and go back and see if you could possibly, go back and receive another offer. So that would definitely not be the path to take. So I think that's basic interview process, and then we're going to go a little bit more into the specifics of the interview itself, right, Tammy?
Yes, so thank you very much, Kevin. So just kind of to introduce myself, I'm Tammy Rosenblum. I'm an Audit Senior Manager out of our Silicon Valley office. So I just kind of wanted to go, so the next couple of slides, we're going to go over some tips about the interview process and also talk about some specifics of how we're doing interviews during our lovely virtual remote process and some tips there. So first, as far as getting ready for your interview, do your research, spend some time on the various websites of the firms that you're interested about. Get to know a little bit about the firm, get to know their size, their locations, what are all the services they offer, even if you want audit or tax or something like that. It's good to know, do they have other consulting services? What all does the firm offer? See if there's, additional things that you care about, that you are looking for in a firm, such as community involvement, how they are being diverse in their culture. Try and see what you can get from their website to help you also see, which firms you're interested in, and kind of gives you up to speed as you prepare for your interview. Make sure your resume is current. Kind of go through your resume one last time, make sure everything that you want on there is on there. Please make sure you do a final grammar, spell check, proofread on it. It's always good to have somebody else look through it. As someone who does do interviews, we notice things. With that also, when you submit your resumes and you submit a cover letter, always do a final check and make sure you're submitting the correct cover letter addressed to the correct people. I've seen cover letters addressed to somebody else coming to Moss Adams. So, it's just these kind of things, little things that just help with your professionalism as you go through and you get ready and you submit stuff. Next, prepare to ask questions. So this is going to always be a huge thing. Anytime you're interviewing for anything, people are going to ask what questions you have. So you want to, and the more specific your questions on either the firm or on audit or tax, the better prepared you look. And that's where, again, as you do your research on the websites of the firms, this will help bring up questions you have, particularly as you look from firm to firm. What is it that you saw on one website, you don't see another firm talking about, and it was something that was important to you, so you want to ask about it. So it's always good to become prepared to ask questions. I know when I interview a lot, I always ask, what made you interested in Moss Adams? So that's something you want to be able to address. And the other thing with that, when it comes to asking questions, you're going to interview with multiple people. It's okay if you ask the same questions to different people. We're not going to know. If you interview with me and you interview with Kevin, I'm going to have no idea that you asked me the exact same questions you asked Kevin. But what could happen is I've interviewed people and they've been like, oh, Kevin already answered all my questions. And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to try and fill the interview process. So it's much better to just repeat questions. It's always good to get somebody else's perspective. Most likely they have a different experience or have something else to add. So Even if you talk to somebody at the firm and you feel like your question was addressed, it's okay and it's preferred that you ask again versus going into the interview and basically saying, I have no questions. Draft an elevator pitch. You know, it's good whether it's the interview or tomorrow with Meet the Firms, that you're prepared to kind of have a brief summary to describe yourself and your background and what you're interested in, and be able to kind of recite it right then and there versus kind of stopping to think about it. So, you know, take a few minutes, come up with like a few short sentences of how you would want to present yourself and introduce yourself. Make sure you are professional and dress appropriately. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but even particularly in this remote environment, you still need to pay attention to how you look. Now, the plus side is it's pretty much usually no more than waist up. So nobody needs to know if you're actually wearing sweatpants on the bottom. But it is important from the waist up that we are appropriately dressed and professional. And then, you know, be yourself. You know, this, for a lot of you, this is probably going to be the first time you're interviewing. And it's very intimidating and it's nerve-wracking, and you want to do a good job. But, you know, remember to breathe, calm down. You know, we're all human. We've all been there. We've all had to, you know, go through our first interviews. So we get it. So it's important that we see your personality. We want to see who you are. We want to see that you're going to fit in with the culture. So it's really important, you know, to come off as yourself. And again, you know, remote interviews, we're going to kind of talk about this as well, but make sure that you pay attention to where you're conducting your interview, because you want to kind of make sure that the background behind you is appropriate and kind of straightened up, and be aware of everything that's going to pop up in your video. Then as you kind of close out your interview, you know, make sure you kind of thank them and, you know, you close out very thoughtfully. And usually it's a good idea to follow up any interview with, you know, connecting with the person you interviewed with on LinkedIn, getting their contact information, shooting them a little email that says, thank you, I appreciate taking your time. You know, just a nice little acknowledgement always goes a long way. So getting a little bit more into presence, and this is kind of where things are a little bit different in the virtual world. You know, we have to put a little bit more thought into things. So as I mentioned before, still make sure you're looking professional. You still want to, you know, it's okay to still wear a suit or at least a very nice professional looking top. Try and stick with like bold colors, stay away from patterns or anything that's too busy. Because again, as you're on screen, things are a little bit more complex. Be present, you know, make sure you are focused on your conversation. Make sure that you are filling out your screen properly, you are attentive, you are focused, you are listening. And push more energy out. Again, you know, it's harder to come across virtually than when you're in person. So you have to put a little bit more effort into your responses and your body language and how you're coming off. Make sure you sit up straight. And, you know, this is, again, always a good thing to kind of check yourself in your camera. And eye contact is really important, you know, making sure that you're staying connected with your interviewer. And now getting into setup. You know, pay attention to how you come off in your video, you know, so this is always good to log on a little bit early. You know, most Zooms or WebEx, whatever, has a little screen of what your video looks like before you connect. So you can adjust your laptop or your camera, however, just to make sure that you are good and center focused. So, you know, you're well seen. You can see the individual on the left. You can just see the top of their head. Doesn't exactly make for the easiest interview conversation. Pay attention to lighting and how you come across in the lighting. You know, natural light is good if you're not somewhere or it's kind of getting towards the end of the day, so you're losing natural light. Make sure you have, you know, good lighting around you. Be careful with backlighting so that there isn't a big light or a big bright light bulb or anything behind you that could make it a little bit harder for the interviewer to be looking at. Background, again, kind of touched on this. Pay attention to what's behind you. If you have to do the interview from your bedroom, make sure you make your bed, make sure you tidy up. Make sure there's nothing too chaotic or busy in the background. You can see Colette's using fake background, so that's always a good option as well. But even then, make sure you kind of test those out. Sometimes people become a little ghosty with those backgrounds and it becomes a little awkward. So figure out what makes the most sense for you. Sound. So again, be conscious of where you're conducting the interview. If you know the gardeners are coming that day, try not to be somewhere by a window where the lawnmower is going to go by. So, think about where you are, what's happening around you. If you have roommates or you live with family, make sure you let them know you're having an interview and to not bother you and, try and keep things quiet. We do understand, everybody understands things happen, particularly if you have small children in your household, you can't always avoid things. So if somebody walks by or a kid pops up, it's okay. Don't freak out about it. You can acknowledge it, if you've got a kid that pops up or somebody, you can introduce them, say hi, it's fine. And then hopefully, can get things moving on again. But try and, as you set up your interviews in your times, think about what's going on, where you are, and where the best place that you can focus and have some peace and quiet would be good. And then presence, again, just making sure you're present for the process. Okay, and this is just getting a little bit more detailed kind of things that we talked about, the camera positioning, it should be eye level or slightly above. Speak into the camera lens as if you have eye contact. So again, make sure when you set up your interview, you've got it aligned with your camera. You don't want your interviewer on one screen and your camera somewhere else, so that you're not, if you're looking at the interviewer, you're not looking at the camera, just make sure everything's lined so, you can look straight ahead. Your shoulders and forehead should be in view. Try not to be too close, but don't be too far away. And then again, we kind of talked about the lighting. I would say one thing that we've had with some of these Zooms and lighting is some of my coworkers have very dark hair. And with the natural light, it looks purple. So again, something to just kind of pay attention to as you look at videos, see how things happen. If you show up and your hair looks purple, it's okay to comment and say, no, my hair is not really purple. It's, the video. Because we've definitely had some meetings with clients where we've had to explain that no one really has purple hair. It's just coming across that way with the lighting. So again, just be aware of how you look and how things are being presented in your virtual interview. Again, a little bit more background information, keep away from things that are moving. Like if you have ceiling fans, hopefully we're starting to get cooler weather now. So hopefully fans are a little bit less needed, but if you're in a room with ceiling fans, it's probably a good idea to turn that off so it's less distracting to the interviewer as they're trying to talk to you. Make sure TVs are turned off, silence your cell phone, put your cell phone in another room if need be. Avoid any open windows or anything where outside noises could be happening. And again, as I mentioned before, if parents or roommates or somebody pops in, sometimes you just can't avoid it. It happens. We all understand. I think we've all seen that clip from the news from like a couple years ago. The guy's on the news and his kid comes rolling in, and these things happen. So it's okay. You can acknowledge it, but again, try and do what you can to minimize the experience. Then as far as what happens, during the interview process, so these are what we look for. We call them our success skills. So as we meet with our interviewees, these are essentially, as we ask our questions, these are the skills that we're looking for. So collaboration, how do you work with a team? So usually you'll get a lot of questions about examples of working in either on a team project or something in a group. Critical thinking, are you able to problem solve? Growth mindset, where do you see your career going? Are you looking to continue to grow and evolve and develop in your career? Executive presence. So this is a lot of the stuff that we already covered as far as how you come off and how you're presenting yourself, dressing professionally, making sure that you're presented properly. Results focus, making sure you're getting your projects done and completed. Intellectual curiosity, again, wanting to learn new things, continue to grow and develop. And then emotional intelligence. And this is, how well do you work with others? How do you deal with conflicts as things come up? So as you go through the interview process, the questions that your interviewers are going to be asking are essentially used to kind of assess these various skill sets. So knowing this, kind of think about how you would demonstrate and explain that you meet some of these skills. Okay, so assuming your interview goes really well, you get an offer. There is still some offer etiquette that happens. So once, normally you'll get a phone call, you'll get an actual verbal offer with some information will be provided at the time. Those are always followed up by a written offer where obviously even more details provided, it's all in writing and all of that. Always feel free to ask questions. Make sure you understand your offer. And, you can talk to, the individual who called you. You can call your recruiter. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's important that before you accept, what you're accepting. And then, it's important to notify your recruiters as soon as you decide whether you're accepting the offer or you're declining it. You always need to respond and you always need to let them know. And it is important to do that kind of as timely as you make your decision. It's just polite. Obviously, if you're accepting, it's great. People want to know. But even if you're declining, it's important to let the firms that you're declining know so that they know that they can move on and pursue other options. These things do get noted and, they are tracked. You never know where your career is going to end up. You interview with one firm now and you decide maybe you want to try the Big Four and, you go work in the Big Four for a while, then you decide maybe the Big Four is not so fit for you and you want to go back to a smaller firm. Firms keep records, they keep experiences. So no matter what, you want to make sure that you are polite and professional. And again, making sure that you respond timely is important. And then again, kind of with here are the things you should do. There's a couple of things that you shouldn't do. And one of those is, not responding to the recruiters, accepting multiple offers. Again, just if you're not sure, don't accept yet. Kevin mentioned there are deadlines. So it is important to pay attention to those because you don't want to make a deadline. But it's also not appropriate to accept everywhere. And then you have to go back and change your mind. So again, pay attention to those, always reach out and, make sure you're responding to the recruiters.
Tammy, just one thing to add to, if a lot of times with offers, the student wants to talk to their families, you can definitely ask for an extension. So don't be afraid, we do have offer deadlines, but you can ask for an extension and we usually accommodate you. So don't worry about that.
I would be one of those people who would want to talk to my mom about everything. So I get that. Okay. So then just to kind of wrap up and then we're going to open up and hopefully, get your guys' questions. Just to let you know, we have our postings are live. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you guys tomorrow at Meet the Firms. We've got our postings live. Applications aren't due until October 3rd. Again, we require the resume and an unofficial transcript. These are the job posting numbers. And just make sure that even if you apply through Handshake, that you also apply via the Mouse Adams career website. Then if you have any questions on anything, you can contact Colette, who is our amazing campus recruiting coordinator. Always there to help answer any questions and go through anything. Colette, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you did a great job. I think I wanted to go over the postings. You guys, tomorrow is Meet the Firms. Please, please, please apply. You know, we're going to be there. Tammy's going to be there. Kevin's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Sign up for a time slot through Handshake. We'd love to chat with you. Yeah, tomorrow we'll be there.
So I think there were several questions. A couple of them, I think Taylor and Colette, you already responded to. There's one question here. It looks like we haven't responded to, but maybe I can go ahead and answer the question. So it says, if you can you elaborate a little on what you're looking for when taking on any interns, any specific qualities or qualifications? How important is coursework versus eagerness to learn and excel? Great question. So, you know, every interviewer is going to have their own, you know, specific areas that they take interest in. And, you know, we're people, right? So we all have certain things that we might like more than, or prioritize more than others. But generally speaking, I guess what I would say is that, you know, we're looking at the whole person. So there isn't really one specific type of person that we're looking for with one specific types of skills. But what we're looking for is somebody that, generally speaking, we're looking for somebody who has a genuine interest in an accounting career. We're really looking for long-term people that can, you know, be successful. Hopefully someday will become promoted to the manager level, if not even to the partner level. And if they end up leaving public accounting, that we're hoping that they're going to be successful outside of public accounting. We maintain those relationships, and a lot of times our own people become our clients. So, you know, we grow together with the people that we hire, and we train and develop. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for. We're looking for the kind of people that we spend so much time. And one of the things about public accounting, to be honest with all of you, is that it's a pretty big commitment. It's a professional service type of industry. And like lawyers, doctors, it's not a 9-to-5 sort of a job. It really takes a commitment. It takes a dedication. There's this continuous learning. It's sort of like, you know, trying to stay educated for your whole life. And I'm learning something every day. And with the tax code changing constantly, I don't have a choice. And so, but you have to, you know, you have to want to continue to learn. I'd say that for me, it's like the difference between being at UC Santa Cruz and working in public accounting is that you're paying for your education. I'm getting paid for my education. So that's kind of how I look at it. As far as, you know, the qualities, it's going to come across in your interview. So, you know, when you're, you know, like Tammy said, you know, be yourself. When you open up and you're sincere and you've done your homework, you've tried to understand, first of all, yourself, you know, what are the areas that you're truly interested in. You don't really want to prepare canned responses, because those come across as being canned responses. You want to be sincere. You want to be genuine. And when you are, then you're more likely to hit it off with the interviewer. And when you have a connection with the interviewer, those kinds of interviews usually are going to do really well. So hopefully, you know, that was helpful. I didn't really go into the specifics, but I think maybe you can get a better idea. The person who asked that question, hopefully that was helpful.
So I'm going to address the question about Excel. You know, are we expected to know lots of accounting functions in Excel as a college student? So I'm going to go ahead and say no. What we expect is some basic Excel skills. You know, that you're familiar with Excel. You can obviously use some functions and all of that. And I say no only because I am not, you know, that overly skilled with technical formulas and everything. I copy from a lot of other work papers or ask people for help. So the more advanced Excel skills we can definitely teach you. We do kind of have, we hope that there is a basic, you've used Excel before and you're familiar with it and it's not a whole brand new thing. Especially, for the internship level, we know you guys are still in the process and of learning things. So again, just being familiar with it. So it's not a whole brand new tool, but we don't expect complex use of it.
So there's a question here about, do you think there will be opportunities for freshmen? I'm going to hand this over to Colette. I think this is a great question to ask because we do have different types of positions to fill, internships and different kinds of internships as well as full-time positions. So, depending on what level you're at, I think there's probably different deadlines as well as there's different kinds of opportunities depending on where you are in your education. So Colette, do you want to?
Yeah, for freshman and sophomore, we have the GPS internship. And it's a little bit different than the client service internship. It's the same, you're an intern, but you go and learn each function of Moss Adams. Like you'll spend time in marketing, you'll spend time with recruiting, you'll spend some time with innovation teams, you'll spend some time with tax and with audit and consulting. Like you really want to learn what it is you're interested, So we're really trying to grow the GPS internship, kind of pipeline those students then for the next year, which would be a client service internship. And then from there, they would go into a full-time staff. So that's what we're working on for freshmen and sophomores.
I also just want to highlight that freshmen are allowed to go to career fairs. In the virtual career fair function, there are group sessions and one-on-ones. So those group sessions are really more educational, where you can learn about different internships, opportunities, programs, departments within organizations. So if you are a freshman and you're looking at the career fairs, there are some opportunities for you to go in there, and it's not necessarily, oh, I need a job at this moment, because it's really important to educate yourself early on so you know what you want to do when you graduate and what job you want to take.
Let's see.
Okay, is my resume expected to be perfect if I'm a freshman? Well, I think how you define perfect is probably what matters. I mean, your resume is going to have whatever your qualifications are as a freshman, obviously where you are in your school, whatever extracurricular activities you've done, if you've had any working experience, that kind of thing. So, obviously as a freshman, it may not be as built up as like a senior is because you just wouldn't have had any of those experiences yet. But we would still, again, expect proper spelling, proper grammar, all of that kind of stuff. And again, I think no matter what level you are, it's always good to have somebody else, most people know somebody who's a grammar expert. If you've got any friends that are English majors or something like that, have them review it, have them take a look. So I think that would still, no matter what your level is, that'll still be looked at. But as far as qualifications and stuff, we would understand as a freshman, you may not just have gotten to those experiences yet.
Another thing I want to mention about the resume, like, please be sure to put your GPA, because we're going to ask you, if it was low and you have a reason, we want to hear it. We need that information. We want to know your CPA eligibility date. We'll come back and ask you that as well. So there are certain things, and also kind of along the grammar lines, don't put everything in capital letters, like if you put your street address, because say you're applying for a staff and it goes into the system. When you apply, it automatically goes into our system. And if we give you an offer letter, that offer letter is going to pull with all capital letters, and it just doesn't look well, because then we have to go in and make it look presentable. So when you input all your information, really try to pay attention. You might not be thinking of it at the time. You're just trying to hurry up and apply, but those are kind of important things. So just keep that in mind and put those GPAs on your resumes for sure.
We're going to see your transcripts. So we'll find out the
and the
GPA
transcripts
somehow, somewhere anyway. So
they don't send them, they don't attach, they're required. Like we don't have to reach out and say, we could actually say it was an incomplete application, but I always reach out and I say, please send me your transcripts, and they will. And if they're not attached, there's a reason you haven't attached them. It's usually because you might have some bad grades on there. We're going to find out, but like I said, you might be doing better. That might have been grades that, from a while ago, and now you're doing much better. We have never turned down people, if there's a story there, we want to know. And so we'll ask you. So put your GPA on there, Yeah.
We're humans. We probably have our own stories as well.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
And I think that's the main point, is that, there's a story to tell with your resume, right? And so, yes, of course, if you have previous accounting experience, that looks great on paper. If you're
but it's not
a 4.0 student,
yeah.
That looks great on paper. But what's more important, as both Colette and Tammy have mentioned, is, we want to hear the story. We want to know about the person, and we want to know what motivates you, what are your passions. And if you have some passions, if you're really into sports, if you're into really, some other kind of hobbies that you want to talk about and describe in your resume, when you really have a passion for something, generally it shows, right? You're going to have won awards, you're going to have accomplished things that other people might not, and it might not even be related to accounting or business, but it gives us an idea of the person. And so that's what we're really looking for. Is this person going to be successful? Is this person going to be willing to dedicate and work hard to get to the a higher level and make improvements? Because we're all improving. We're all continuously learning and trying to improve. And do you have that type of personality? That's what's really important. That's what we're looking for.
And one of the main things is when we interview, I tell this to all the students when they interview, they're always nervous. And I always tell them it's a conversation. It will be so simple. When you come back out, you will tell me, oh my God, you were right. Because sometimes if the interviewers start talking with a student about a sport, sometimes we have to reel them in and get back on track, because it's just a conversation, and they'll come out of the interview and they'll say, oh my gosh, they were so nice. It really was a conversation. We never pepper with a million questions. That's just not what Moss Adams does. We want to know your story. We're going to look at your resume. We're going to find out what your GPA, if it was low, we'll find out why, and we'll work through it, So, don't be nervous. That's one thing I tell, and I know it's nerve-wracking to interview, but really, we're not there to beat you up or anything. So
and it's important to remember the interview process is two ways. I mean, I think a lot of people get so hung up on, I need a job, I need to sell myself. But it's important, you're there to interview the firm too. Find out about the firm, find out, is that a place you want to work at?
Like if Kevin mentioned, fit, right?
Yeah, Kevin mentioned before that public accounting, it's not an 8-hour job. There's long hours. You're going to work with these people a lot. So you want to make sure it's people you want to work with. You want to make sure it's a firm that that's a good fit for you. So as you talk, and that's why it's important to talk to different firms and find the firm that you think fits you best.
Absolutely.
Good point, Tammy.
Okay, are there any internship opportunities for seniors at Moss Adams? Maybe Colette, you can.
I think it would depend, like if you're going for your master's and you have some more time, because when you have to be in school still when you're doing your internship. So think of it that way. If you're doing a 5th year to get those credits, then yes. If you're going to graduate by the time the internship rolls around, it's too late.
So I guess if you're not going for the master's and you're a senior and you want to
staff, you'd be
obtain
staff.
that, you'd either have to interview for the like the audit or tax staff position. If you wanted an internship, you'd have to plan on extending your education for what, probably another year or something? Is that?
And a lot of people do that. You know, they got to get those requirements for the CPA licensure, and they're going to be pushing out, you know, they'll do a winter internship, then they'll do a summer internship, and then they'll be available for staff the following year. So, I mean, it's doable.
And the CP eligibility requirement, I mean, it can be met in various ways, right? It could be taking undergraduate level courses. It could be taking them after you graduate at a community college. It could be taking it in a master's program. So I'm sure that you see all of the above, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so there's another question. When you were in an interview, as someone who is attending an interview for the first time, having some hesitations on what to ask and what might be redundant or irrelevant. Okay, I think everybody who's gone through their first series of interviews has the same exact feelings that is described up there. I can sort of remember my first interviews. It's a while ago. It's more than a few years ago, but I'd say that the important thing is to be prepared, right? Know yourself, know the firm you're interviewing with. Spend the time to actually look at what they do. I'll give an example of what not to do. I had an interview with someone, and I was asking some questions. It was pretty evident the person didn't really do much homework on either our firm or on the industry itself. And I asked point blank, have you looked at the Moss Adams website? And the candidate said no. And I was like, wow, well, he's honest. So that was good. But that sure lost a lot of points with me at that stage. So, it's good to be sincere and honest, but you really need to be prepared. If you don't spend the time to prepare for the interview, it's hard for the interviewer to feel like it's worthwhile to spend time with the candidate. And so, but as far as, what kind of questions to ask, in preparing for that interview, again, I think, the main thing is, to try to find out about the person that you're interviewing with. So not only, at the firm and about the firm, but about the individual. If you're interested in a career in tax versus audit, or you're still trying to figure it out, maybe you can ask your interviewer, what helped them to make their decisions to choose the path that they took. Tammy is on the audit side. I'm on the tax side. I spent a couple of years in audit before tax, so I can probably speak to both careers. But, asking your interviewer about their personal reasons behind why they chose their career sometimes could lead to a meaningful kind of a conversation and more of an interactive type of discussion with that interviewer. So
I think so just to add on, I think also find out why they're with the firm they're with, why are Kevin and I at Moss Adams? Why, find out, have we been at other firms? Why are we here? Why are we still here? I think getting a good understanding of the culture of the firm, figuring out what's important to you. If some people already know in college, I want to be a partner one day, ask those questions. What's the partner path like? Is it, based on ability, or is it set 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, figure out what matters to you. If some of the students we've talked to, they want to know about how we're involved in our community and how we're doing that, because that's important to them. So think about, what's important to you in your life, as well as, what do you want out of your career, which I get you may not know. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And, I think I grew up like 20 years ago. So, it's a hard thing, but, I think there's never going to be any like, that's a bad question or anything like that. So I think it's better to just go ahead and ask, and you get the answer you want. So you can figure out if the firm's a good fit for you.
Right. Yeah. And the cultural fit, right? What kind of a culture does the firm that you're interviewing with have? What kind of, and sometimes it's hard to tell from just reading about the firm, and you might be able to get a better idea when you're speaking with an interviewer about the company's culture. So, try to ask those probing kind of questions that give you a better idea of, what sort of culture they have, because every firm has a slightly different culture, and even within a firm, they might have a different culture within, from office to office.
Yeah, and I just want to plug a few resources that we have on campus that can help you prepare for interviews. So obviously the Career Success team puts on events. We should be having one for an interview specific early November. I know that's after this event, unfortunately, but there's other resources as well. You can do drop-in appointments with our career coaches or peer coaches. As well as all students have access to LinkedIn Learning for a year, which is a great resource. There's a lot of videos on there on like common interview questions and kind of how to prepare, and maybe more specific to accounting firms. I'm not 100% sure, but it's worth checking out and just watching them and kind of preparing with common questions and how to ask panelists on your interview questions, things like that. So there's a lot of resources, and I'll share those in the chat while they finish answering the rest of the questions here.
So here's a great question. What if I have some courses from community college and UCSC? Will I list both GPAs? So either Taylor or Colette can probably answer that question.
Yes. I mean, why not?
Do you just list both of them? You wouldn't take the
Yeah. And we get that all
right?
the time. People put their GPA. Obviously, we want to know what your GPA is at the current school you're at, or, and then like with transcripts, when we request transcripts, if you transferred from a JC, it will be on your transcript. So we wouldn't need both transcripts. It should be on your current transcripts if you've transferred. But if you want to put your JC GPA, that's fine.
And then Colette, there's a question about applying for the GPS internship.
Yeah, for the GPS internship, the rec is not up yet. They're still proofing it. And one major thing I forgot to note about it is a diversity internship for diverse students. It's not quite as long as the client service. It goes about 2 weeks shorter. So it's not quite 8 weeks. It's about 6 weeks. But again, it's learning everything about Moss Adams and what they have to offer. It's really an awesome internship. So for those freshmen and sophomore, check the Moss Adams Careers website. Once it goes up, please apply. We'd love to have some Santa Cruz banana slugs.
Well, yeah, it looks like there's no more questions in the Q&A, but I just want to say thank you so much, Tammy, Kevin, and Colette, for being here this evening and giving us some tips and tricks on how to get hired in accounting firms. I have linked a lot of resources in the chat, especially Meet the Firms tomorrow, which is the career and internship fair for accounting firms. So if you haven't already, please log into your Handshake, register, and sign up for sessions. You can do one-on-one and group sessions with the firms. And I know Moss Adams has some availability.
Yes, we do. Sign up. The three of us will be interviewing tomorrow, you guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we hope to meet some of you tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hope everyone here. Oh, we have one more question if you want to take the time. We have 4 minutes.
What does it say? Are the GPS internships limited to freshmen or can? No, yeah, they're limited to freshmen and sophomore. The juniors are for regular client service internships. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Kevin, did you
you.
have something you wanted to say?
No, just good luck. Good luck to everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and thank you all again so much. We appreciate it. And I hope you have an awesome day at Meet the Firms tomorrow.
Thanks so much, Taylor.
Thank you,
Thank
Taylor.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.